Alright guys, so today we're going to be going over some quick tips for the new game Mega Bonk. Now I'm trying to put a few tips in here to help everybody from brand new gamers all the way up to people who are currently playing the game and maybe even struggling to get to the end game. Now I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the intro, so let's go ahead and hop into the video. So the first thing I want to talk about is actually going to be some general gameplay tips. These are things that I think will help a lot of new and intermediate players out. The first thing I actually want to talk about is going to be your movement around the map. So while some characters like Callium and Tome are very fast and can make short work of every map, not everybody's this fast. And one of the few things you can do to offset this is going to be skate. So if this is something you haven't done, the main thing you're going to want to do here is jump diagonally and or rotate your camera while you're jumping. If you look at the gameplay in the background, you'll see how much faster I move when I do this over just walking. Now you can actually combine this by holding down slide and it will let you move across the maps really quickly. Now this is something that is much easier to do in the desert, but you can make use of it in something like the forest. Either way, this is something that you are going to want to learn how to do, as it will make your runs much faster and it will help out when it comes to your slow moving characters. The second thing I want to point out is that you want to try to keep moving. This game is all about collecting things and trying to outscale the enemies. And the easiest way to do that is to move around the map and snag chests, statues, and upgrades. But you cannot do this if you get stuck standing in one spot farming enemies. And while it might seem like a good idea to get those early levels of XP, it is not going to pay off near as much as getting all of these other buffs from the other items. I know one of the biggest fears is going to be that you're going to miss a bunch of XP by running, but don't worry about that. You will be able to suck it up with at least one magnet at some point later on in your run. Now, speaking of moving, another thing you're going to want to do, especially in the forest, is stack jumps. The elevation in the forest can be a pain in the ass. And because of that, stacking jumps will make your life better. This will allow you to move around the elevation without any problems, and it will get you above the enemies, which can make it easier for you to stay alive. Plus, it's easier to skate when you have multiple jumps and you're jumping in the air. To me, in a lot of my runs, jumping is something that I prioritize now that I use it. And if you do happen to pick up a scarf, this is just going to ratchet up your damage even more. And even outside of that, in the late stages of the game, being able to jump or completely avoid hordes will save your life. So pick up some jumps, get out there, try it, and see what you think. Speaking of the maps and the movements, you are going to want to prioritize smashing bases and urns early on in all of your runs. These are free XP and they will help you level up in the early stages. Grabbing these in the first couple minutes can really change your build and can make it to where you are not stuck fighting a bunch of enemies going into the middle parts of your first round. And even outside of that, they are good XP later on in your run, so make sure you're breaking these and try to path to any of them you see. So now when you're on the map, we're going to prioritize what we're doing and how we're doing it. The first thing we're going to do is hit as many charge shrines as we can. After we hit the charge shrines, we're going to focus on the Moe statues. The reason we like to do the Moe statues second is this is going to give us a little bit of time to build money. Having money is nice when you run into these because you can re-roll on them, and effectively they are 3 chests in one. And re-rolling gives us a really good shot at pulling a legendary item. So having money when you get to these will help you out and will give you the best chance of getting the items you want out of them. After those, I like to try to do the cross swords if I have time, and then I mix that in with chasing down the guys with hats. Those guys are also effectively loot chests. But you can tell what rarity of item you're going to get at a minimum by the color of hat. So if you see somebody with a yellow hat, you know they're going to always drop 3 legendary items. And then the last thing you want to spend your money on is going to be chests. Because you don't know what you're going to get out of chests, these are the least important thing, but they are still important. Now outside of all of those, there are microwavers on the map, and you can use this to duplicate any item you like. The main thing I like to use this for is going to be duplicating cheeses, but you can duplicate any item you want as long as the rarity of that item matches the color of the microwave. But do keep in mind that when you microwave an item, you will need a sacrifice item of the same rarity. That item will be deleted and you will be given a duplicate of the item you microwaved. So make sure to pay attention when you use this because you could accidentally delete an item that you did not want to get rid of. Now I know we already talked about shrines, but I did separate out one shrine in particular, and that is going to be the multiple boss shrine. These are great for spawning you additional chests, which give you an additional shot at a legendary, but be very careful when you use them. Typically, I only use them if I have cheese and a solid build. My thought behind this is if it's going to take me multiple minutes to kill all of the bosses that spawn, that I have sacrificed all that time that I needed to scour the map and find more upgrades. This is a very high risk, high reward item, and it can push you into the final wave on the boss for that tier if you're not paying attention. So I would say be careful using this, make sure you understand your character, and you're definitely gonna wanna have cheese in your build if you consider touching these shrines. So now that we went through all the general tips, I wanna talk about tomes. One of the biggest ways to level up your gameplay is to really understand the tomes and how they synergize with your builds. One of the easiest examples of this is going to be Chad. Chad's main weapon is Aura. This is the weapon that comes on him intrinsically. Now, if you're using Aura and you're pairing it with something that is a projectile weapon, for this example, we're going to use Black Hole. You're going to want to find a tome that synergizes well with both of these items. So while a tome like Projectile might work very, very well in a lot of builds, and it will work very well with Black Hole, it will do absolutely nothing for his Aura. So for somebody like Chad, we would want to try to prioritize a different tome. Either something like Attack Speed, which will speed up both the procs on his Aura and how fast he throws out the black holes, or something like the Size Tome, which will make both his Aura and the black hole balls much bigger. While this doesn't seem like a massive tip, it will actually matter when you go to take on the final bosses. And that's because you want to have as much build synergy as you can to ensure that you have the damage output you need to take these bosses out. On the topic of tomes, I want to talk about the trifecta: the Luck Tome, the XP Tome, and the Curse Tome. These three tomes are very important when you pair them all together. They will let your characters scale up an insane amount, but the problem is it's going to take you quite a while to scale those up. And in doing so, you will lose a little bit of damage until they're scaled. So I would highly advise actually not using the trifecta in most of your runs unless you're trying to do a very deep last wave run. For most of your builds, you will be much better off prioritizing 3 or 4 damage tomes, or a couple damage tomes and a couple survivability tomes. You will see people using these online, and you will see people putting these in builds and speedrun guides as well as leaderboard pushes, but those are very, very niche use case scenarios. At the end of the day, you're going to have a much better time messing with all the tomes available and combining them in unique and fun ways to make your build work well and to ensure your survivability in the first 3 tiers. Speaking of upgrades, this is going to be a really quick tip, but it is something I want to throw in because I know some people might not know. When you're getting upgrades on the map, the rarity is going to go gray, green, blue, purple, red, and then yellow. I know the one that confuses people the most is red to purple, but at the end of the day, this is the color difference in the upgrades in the order of rarity. So when it comes to refining your build during the match, make sure to utilize your skips, banishes, and refreshes. These will help make it much easier for you to get the items you want and to make sure that you are actively getting the build that you're trying to craft. Don't be afraid to banish an item that you know you do not want to have show up again as a reward or as an item or tome. If you're on something like a Moe statue, don't be afraid to use your refreshes to try to get better rewards. Or if you're really struggling, don't be afraid to use your refresh to try to pull a better weapon. And at the end of the day, don't be afraid to skip. One of the biggest things that can mess you up in a run is refreshing non-stop. You are trying to save up money to use them for better things. Early in a run, you really need your money. That money is going to help you pull better items from Moe statues, buy items from the hatted guy, or even open chests. And it can suck if you spend all of your money on refreshes just to not get what you want anyway. So don't be afraid to just skip, save your money, and try again when you level up. And last but not least, don't be afraid to crank the difficulty on the maps. As you're playing through, you're going to start to notice that you are steamrolling everything on the map, and that is a good time to actually increase the difficulty. Raising the difficulty will get you more monsters spawning, and that will net you more XP, which will get your build up and running even faster and get you doing more damage. Now, even if you don't have the Cursed Tome on you, you can still raise the difficulty. There are a couple different ways to do this. One of the easiest ways is to run around and click on the skulls on the map. These will give you a 5% buff to your difficulty. This is a great way to ratchet up the difficulty without actually needing to take up a tome slot. The other way is to pull difficulty from the charge shrines. But be careful, some of these can scale up very, very quickly, and you can find yourself in over your head before you know it. Now, I know we were in here talking about the shop, but there are a few things in here I do want to discuss. One of them is going to be the toggler. this is a great item to have. This will let you toggle on and off any item that you have unlocked. So in your weapon list, any item that did not come with the default game can be turned off. This is going to make it much easier for you to get the exact item you want when it comes time to pull it in game. This also works for tomes as well as upgrades that you have acquired. To me, this is one of the biggest things to prioritize because it will make your time with the game much more enjoyable. Also, do keep in mind that you can buy and sell upgrades back non-stop. The cost that you refund them will be the exact same cost that you bought them for, so you can do this infinitely. The reason I bring this up is there are some challenges that you might want to do, and those challenges can be very hard to do if you have 4 weapons and 4 tomes. There's actually a really good use case for not running 4 weapons and 4 tomes depending on what you're actually doing in the game. And turning the additional weapons and tomes off will ensure that you only have the amount of weapons or tomes that you want to upgrade, so you're not wasting XP on something that you don't want to put it on. So don't be afraid to refund items and experiment with your shop. So now I want to talk a little bit about the characters. There's actually a pretty deep roster of characters when you get them all unlocked, and a lot of them have their own strengths and their own weaknesses. Some characters like Ufi do get additional armor per level, which does help them out with a little bit of survivability. Other characters like Clank gain increased crit chance per level. Bandit gains additional attack speed per level. Somebody like the Spaceman gains additional XP per level, and somebody like Sir Chadwell actually gains additional difficulty per level. This is something that you need to familiarize yourself with and figure out which character works best for you. Don't be afraid to try out these different characters and see what their strengths and their weaknesses are. And don't be afraid to build into those strengths or use those strengths to offset the tomes that you put on the character. For instance, if you're using somebody like Bandit, you maybe can forego putting attack speed on them for something like size. Or if you're playing somebody like Spaceman and you're not doing a very deep run, you can completely ignore the XP tome because he's going to get additional XP just from being played. At the end of the day, find a character that works well with your playstyle and somebody that you enjoy playing. Also, before we stop talking about characters, I do want to talk about Callium. Callium is a very strong character in the game right now. Callium can very easily take out all the content in the game, and he's somebody that is in the base game. You don't need to do anything to unlock him. Now, while he does take a little bit to get used to, once you do get used to him, you'll really understand what I'm talking about. His ability to move around and traverse the maps makes him just an absolute blast to play. Slap on a couple additional projectile weapons, and this guy can run laps around everybody in the game while still doing an insane amount of damage. He is the first character that I was actually able to complete Forest 3 with, because he does have a lot of forgiveness in his kit. So definitely consider trying Callium. And if you're looking for another version of Callium, try to unlock Tony McZoom. I really like Tony a little bit more than Callium, and that's mainly because of his wireless dagger. I think the wireless dagger is a better weapon than the bone personally. But at the end of the day, both of these are very strong characters. Now outside of that, I'll give you a couple more recommendations. A lot of people are using the Bandit for very deep runs when it comes to the final wave. His attack speed ramping up really helps him out. And on top of that, he has the Dexecutioner, which is a solid weapon. If you build him right, he can go very deep in the final wave. So outside of the Bandit, the Spaceman does good as well. And a lot of this is because of his XP scaling. Combine that with his Black Hole, which is a very solid weapon, and you can go super deep into the game just using the Spaceman. Now, both Dicehead and Sir Chadwell are interesting characters. Sir Chadwell can do a lot, but he is very hard to get up and running, and as you level him up, the difficulty per level is going to make it very hard to keep him alive. But the upside to that is more enemies means more XP. And Dicehead can upgrade random stats, and some of these can be OP if you get him deep enough in the game. But even somebody like Mega Chat has a place in the game and does a good job when it comes to endgame scaling. Now I'm going to spend a quick second to talk about both of the maps and give you a couple quick tips. The first one we're going to talk about is the forest. The forest's elevation sucks. If you do not get lucky with jumps, the forest can completely mess you up. Even if you're jumping around and skating, sometimes the map gets bisected in a way that if you go around one direction, you cannot physically go the other direction, in which case you have to recircle back to find the boss portal. No matter what you do, if you get a bad spawn on the forest, it can really mess up your runs and make it much harder for you to get around. And that is one of the main reasons we try to prioritize the extra jumps. Before you take any massive plunges, try to take a second and look around and see if there is a way out from where you're going. If the way out is going to take you a completely different way than the way you want to go, maybe second guess going down that big jump and try finding another way around the map. Also, one other quick tip on the forest is if you do take a giant plunge, if you slide down along the wall, it will prevent you from taking a bunch of damage when you take a big fall. Now, the desert is much more forgiving. It is a very vast, wide open space. You can traverse this super quickly and you can skate in every direction. The downside is that the desert's enemies are a little bit less forgiving, the cactus are annoying, and the giant scorpions are a pain in the ass. When it comes to the desert, I would highly prioritize you really take advantage of the openness and the ability to move around. Make sure you use the priority list above when it comes to interacting with things. Because it's so easy to traverse the desert, there's no reason for even the slowest character not to be able to move around this map quickly and to fully take advantage of everything there. Because transparently, the desert is a little bit harder and does scale a little bit faster. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers on the final boss, even though I do think it would fit in with this guide, but I think half of the fun is going into the final boss's blind. So all I really want to say is before you do the final boss, enjoy yourself on stage 3 and maximize as much time as you can before you use the portal. But if you're deciding not to do the final boss and you're trying to do a final wave run, keep in mind that this is no joke. These enemies scale insanely fast, and once you get past a certain point, your defense and your HP do not matter. I have found that typically around minute 4 or 5, if anything touches you, it is an instant one-shot kill. So no matter how much HP you have, how much armor you have, whether you have the chonk plate, it does not seem to matter. The only way that I've found to survive really deep into these waves is to try to outscale the enemies. You do not want to try to lifesteal, and you do not want to try to out-regen the damage. This is not going to happen. At the end of the day, you can't overheal a one-shot. So if you're making these runs, prioritize going full damage and just hope that you make it to the final wave and can start to scale up. And for those deep runs, I could make an entire build guide on how to do it. But I will give you a couple quick tips. If you're trying to do the 6-minute deep run, prioritize the De-Executioner, Black Hole, and the Size Tome. The reason we like De-Executioner is because there is a very small chance it can instantly execute an enemy. And this is going to be huge when it comes to those deep stage runs. Black Hole is amazing because it does really solid knockback and it is very large. So when you have a lot of these on the map, they will effectively create a barrier around you that will stop the enemies from rushing directly to you. It doesn't hold them in place long, but it does stop them from instantly zooming to you. And if you combine this with the Size Tome, you can make a wall that most enemies cannot get by. Now, that's not everything you need to know for those deep run builds, but that will be enough to help you out. And that should help you understand why people are using these 3 items in particular when it comes to those deep runs. Our whole goal here is to instantly kill things and keep them as far away from us as possible. Because no matter what, once you get deep enough in, you will get one shot if anything touches you. Alright guys, and that's it. That is everything you need to know about Mega Bonk. So I was trying to keep this a short video, but I feel like I've failed. However, I do feel like I've put a lot of tips in here, and hopefully these tips help you guys when you play Mega Bonk, help you clear the bosses, and help you with some of your deep pushes, as well as your ability to just navigate the maps and have fun. I've been having a blast with this game, and I think for $10, it's one of the best deals on the internet. If you guys enjoyed the content, consider liking and subscribing for more guide and video game coverage in the future. And if you want to get to know me and my community, consider coming over and watching me live, either here on YouTube or over on Twitch. I do stream 5 days a week, and I'd absolutely love to get to know you. But having said all that, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.